Are you looking at this new year with eyes of fear or with eyes of faith? After experiencing the year 2020, are you looking at this new year with fear or with faith? Are you expecting more of the same? Or are you expecting God to do something great in your life this new year? How you see this year will make all the difference in the world. And this story shows us what happens when your vision of the future is based on fear instead of faith. Okay, so let's get into this. Now, you know the story. Looking at the future with fear, which 10 of the 12 spies did, causes all kinds of problems. In fact, this story illustrates, 5 or so of the traps, maybe 6 that we fall into. Why don't you write these down? Here's what happens when you look at the new year or you look at the future with fear instead of faith. Number 1, we learn from this story, I overemphasize the negative. When I look at the future in fear, I overemphasize the negative in life. Verses 27, 28, it says, this was their report to Moses. We arrived in the land you sent us to see, and it is indeed a magnificent country, the land flowing with milk and honey. Here's some of the fruit as proof. But, now circle the word but, because now what you get to but, you're going to see with eyes of fear. Here's the conflicting information. But the people living there are powerful, and their cities and towns are fortified, and they're very large. And we also saw the Anakim. When you overemphasize the negative, it creates a lot more stress in your life. When you're looking at everything with fear, you worry that the glass is always half empty instead of being happy and grateful that the glass is still half full. Look at what you have left, not what you've lost. Now, of course, life is filled with negatives. Everything is broken by sin on this earth. Not all news is positive, but you do have a choice in choosing what you're going to focus on, what you're going to emphasize, and that is going to directly affect your happiness in this new year. So the spies brought back conflicting news. 2 of the spies had eyes of faith, and they gave positive news. Okay, but 10 of the spies had eyes of fear, and they delivered negative news. So I focus on the negative when I'm looking with eyes of fear. Number 2, second trap. I pay too much attention to what other people are doing. I pay too much attention to what others are doing. Numbers 13:29 says this. They're focusing not on the beauty and the value of the land. They say the Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites and Jebusites and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan River. What are they saying here? What's the point? It's a scarcity mentality. What they're saying is there won't be enough for us this year. All the good land is already taken by other tribes. There's really no room for us in this promised land. There aren't enough resources for everybody. We heard a lot of that this last year. Panic buying during the pandemic. There's not enough. Everybody's trying to get it for themselves. Why did God bring us here? Now, if you look at this new year with eyes of fear, you too are going to develop a scarcity mentality, which is going to create stress in your life, like there's not enough. And say, all the good experiences are gone. All the good jobs are already taken. All the good houses are already bought. All the good husbands are married. You're going to look around as a scarcity mentality. No, you got to look with the eyes of faith. Number 3, third trap that we see from this story, when we look at the future with fear instead of faith. I underestimate the abilities that God has given me. I underestimate the abilities God has given me when I look at the future with fear. Because seeing life with eyes of fear causes you to bury your talents. You know that story that Jesus told. Numbers 13:31, the men who had gone with Caleb said, we can't. Circle that, we can't. We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. They're underestimating their own ability. Did you know the people who always say, I can't, and the people who always say, I can, are both right? Why? Because fear creates self-fulfilling prophecies. You got a vision based on fear rather than faith, it's going to limit you for your entire life. You're going to miss opportunities. You're going to waste talent that God has put inside you. And you're going to set yourself up with self-fulfilling and self-defeating predictions. You know, this happened. Job says in Job 3:25, he said, "What I have always feared has happened to me. And what I have dreaded has now come to be." Let me ask you a very personal question. What are you setting yourself up for in this new year? What are you setting yourself up for in just with your attitude? How are you seeing yourself? Are you looking at your own abilities as I'm inadequate? I'm incapable? Are you looking at your life in faith or in fear? The spies with fear-based vision saw themselves as inadequate. Verse 32 and 33, they said, "The land we explored devours those living in it." What a hyperbole. The land we explored devours those living in it? He says, all of the people we saw there are of great size. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. You see what they're saying here? We saw ourselves as insects waiting to be devoured. That word devour in Hebrew actually means to eat up. They said, these people are going to eat our lunch. And they're Nephilim, they're giants, they're bullies, they're tyrants, they're NFL linebackers. And it's a great size. And they say, we saw ourselves as grasshoppers in our own eyes. That's a pretty pathetic self-image. We're insects. We're bugs. They're going to squash us. We're going to go smash against the windshield. And then they says, we saw ourselves, notice that sentence, we saw ourselves as grasshoppers, and we looked the same to them. What are they doing? They are projecting their fears on others. That's one of the problems of a fear-based vision, is you project your fears on everybody else. If you think you look a certain way, you think everybody else thinks you look that way. That's a problem. It's a trap. Number 4. The fourth trap of vision with fear instead of faith is I infect others with my negativity. I infect others with my negativity. Did you know that fear is contagious? Did you know parents can pass on fear to kids? And it can actually be passed from generation to generation. Verse 32, it says, they spread a bad report about the land they had explored. They didn't just keep it to themselves. This is what happens when you become afraid. You start talking trash. You start talking negative. You start complaining, start griping. The Bible, this is why, by the way, the Bible tells you to not hang out with negative people. Did you know that in Proverbs it says many times, don't hang out with scoffers and cynics. Don't hang out with negative people, critics and complainers. If you start hearing some conspiracies this year, let me give you a verse to go back to. It's Isaiah chapter 8, verse 12. Here's what it says, Isaiah 8:12. Don't say that everything people call a conspiracy is a conspiracy. And don't fear what they fear. Don't let it terrify you. Number 5, a fifth trap, if you don't have eyes of faith, is I make myself miserable. When I look at my life and I look at the future with eyes of fear, I just make myself miserable. Here's what happened after they came back with this fear-based report, Numbers 14, 1 and 2. Then all the people began weeping aloud. Okay? They're crying. And they cried all night. And they grumbled. And they complained in a great chorus against their leaders. Moses, the guy had led them out of slavery, against their leaders, Moses and Aaron. And they said, we wish we died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness. Are you kidding me? They wailed. They're having a full-blown pity party. We would have rather stayed slaves than have to face what we're going to face in the future. We would have rather died in the desert than have to face the future because we're so afraid. Now, that's a very important verse because you can know that you're looking at life with eyes of fear when the 4 warning lights that are in that verse show up in your life. When these four things show up in your life, you know, I'm not looking at the future with faith, I'm looking at the future with fear. Notice the four things. Your sadness increases. It says they cried all night. They were depressed. And sometimes fear is caused, or depression is caused by fear. Depression can be caused by a lot of different things. But sometimes it can be caused by fear. Your sadness increases. Number two, your complaining increases. Has your spouse noticed you complaining more lately? It says they grumbled and they complained. Why? Because they were afraid. They were afraid. Okay? Third, you start second guessing your leaders. It says they grumbled and complained in a great chorus against their leaders, Moses and Aaron. They said, we wish you hadn't led us here. You're doing a lousy job of leading us. And fourth, you want to go backwards. You want to go back to a prior time. They said, it would have been better for us to have died in Egypt. You don't want any of those things. But those are signs that you're living based on a vision of fear than a vision of faith.